Hey everyone, it's Joe Lyons, and I was commenting earlier, this is the 37th AutoHotkey webinar. This one's it's not really going to be quote-unquote a webinar in that sense of I don't have a set topic to discuss. I have some code I was going to walk through, and maybe we can pick some other scripts and just, start working through them and see what everyone on the call is trying to learn, what they're wanting to learn. I mentioned earlier, I launched a Udemy course, an Intro to AutoHotkey course, and it was really difficult to try to figure out what in the world to put into that course because AutoHotkey is so vast, and I wanted to keep it to the basics that most people would probably use and not overwhelm people, keep it to non-programmers, right? So maybe at some point we could talk through about what, hey, on stage 2, or what was missing, if there was stuff, if anyone's worked through it and looked at it, what was missing, but then what should be the next level, because I want to do like little modulars to it, so we can kind of brainstorm on that. Also brainstorm on ideas for future webinars if people have ideas on what to cover. Jackie and I, we were doing a podcast the other day, I think, and we were talking through it, and we were thinking a fun one would be to actually work through the whole decision-making process of creating a script when you talk to people and the thoughts that goes through your mind to evaluate what you should do, how much you should automate, and that entire process might be a fun one because it's very dynamic and it's hard to, just make general rules, but we can describe that thought process, right, of what we really go through. Thank you. And so for that, let's get started here. So I think most of you guys I've seen before. And we start off, we had 30 registrants, but again, we didn't expect too many this one. It's the middle of summer. You start off muted, but you can unmute yourself, as John demonstrated, if you have a question, or raise your hand, or I'm trying to watch the chat as well as, if you have a question, just go ahead and raise your hand and ask it. Raise your hand. There's a button somewhere for that, but you can unmute yourself and ask it, or just type it in the chat and I'll eventually see it. And, it's just easier to start off with everybody muted because if not, it gets to be mayhem. And let's get so the last couple short talks Jackie and I did, we discussed the overall computer automation continuum, basically. So RPAs in the far left, AI, intelligent, cognitive intelligence stuff is over on the right, where AutoHotkey is in that. And then I think if I remember right, we got a little off topic on it, but it was an interesting conversation to help understand structured data versus unstructured data, what that actually even means, because it's where do you see a definition of what structured data and unstructured data is? It's not very clear. But what are things that AutoHotkey plays in? What is it's good for? And areas that it's not good for, right, that we're not going to do probably with AutoHotkey, at least not right now. Having said that, we did have a webinar on doing neural networks with AutoHotkey. So you can do some cool stuff, but generally speaking, that's not what we're doing with AutoHotkey. And then we did one on actually it was this one on the prioritizing work. That was the one where we were talking through of like, hey, let's do a webinar on that. And then we had some search terms that you can look at and see how popular certain keywords were, like RPA, robotics process automation. And if you don't know, but that's the and I shouldn't say it's the best because nobody likes that term, robotic process automation, right? You think of a robot. I like to think if you put virtual in front of robot, it makes a lot more sense to me because when I hear robotic process, I think of robots, and we don't have robots doing stuff, right? We'll create a bot, which is a program. So if I think of it as a virtual robot, it makes a lot more sense to me. But we were showing the frequency of the terminology, and also for Automation Anywhere, for Blue Prism, for AutoHotkey and AutoIt, and showing the changes over time. And I'm still hopeful. The overall term for RPA has been jumping way up, but the stuff for like AutoHotkey and AutoIt has been really flat overall, and it's really irks me that more people aren't interested in it. Actually, it was one of the things I plan to do as one of my future videos is to talk through and say, the title for SEO would be, like alternative to Automation Anywhere, right? Or alternative to Blue Prism, because those things on average cost you like $10,000 per license per bot. And then if you have a develop environment, you got to have a license for that as well. It's insane, especially when there's a tool like AutoHotkey that's free and actually does, on average, more quicker as long as you have someone that knows how to program. So anyway, that was those. Let's get into This is a script that I wrote the other day. I was in a car and I was reading something and it had a word that I didn't understand, and I'm like, you know what, I wonder if I could find some words that that I'd like to learn that are, quote unquote smart words. And so let's pull this website here real quickly. So I came in here and these were supposedly 100 words that can make you sound smart, right? They're not gonna make you smart, but at least if you use them, you'll sound smart. And so I could have done a lot more with this, but I went in and just copied it. And then I copied that and I was surprised. I thought it was going to keep it into 3 columns, but no, lo and behold, when I pasted it, it dropped it into 1. And I put that into a text file, this is the path to that file right here. And so the very first one, I just stored it into a variable just so I could reuse it later. But I actually, in this version, I didn't use it twice. In another version, which was more flexible, I used it twice, which I'll show you in the main script. But in here, I just kept it nice and tight. So first, I stored the path as a variable. And then I read that. I used file read to read in that file into the variable. So it read all of that into a variable called var. Yeah.
Do you want to share the screen?
Well, I want to make you guys guess. Sorry. Yeah. That whole time. Yeah, that's sorry. I'm recording and I'm just sitting here talking into nothing. So yeah, thank you. This is why it's helpful to have more than one person doing these things, because I don't have a screen to see what you guys see, unfortunately, right? But anyway, so let me go back. So here was the website, and this I was surprised. So however they built this, I didn't look at the HTML, but when I copied it and pasted it, it actually put it into 1 line per word, and so that's what I stored into this file here. And then I'm reading that into the file path variable, and then I read that file into var. And then I went through and just said, because I know there were 100 words, right? This is where it was simple. And I said, okay, let me get a random number between 1 and 100 and store that as random row. And then I'm going to use the file read line and go into that file, to this file, to that random row, and this is where you're going to read that 1 row, and then say, hey, now grab that row and store it in this variable called word, and then take, on the very next one, I'm going to launch, it'll be my default browser. That's how AutoHotkey works, is when you tell it to go to a website, it will try to run it, and it launches your default browser, because this is built into Windows. And I push in the word here. Actually, let me show you the other thing I did, was I just said, like, taco, right? It doesn't really matter what, as long as, let's do taco in dictionary. And so here, and I found this, I'm like, oh, okay. And I took the URL and I stripped out stuff that I figured I didn't need. So any of that I probably didn't need. This EMQ, let's get rid of this. Now, the first one here, just so you understand how HTTP protocol works, you need, the first one needs, more often than not, needs to be a question mark and then the ampersand. Sometimes they'll work without that, but let's see if this brings back the same thing. So it brought back the same thing, right? So now all I need to do is to put in Q equals taco and then dictionary, and that's interesting. It has OQ equals taco again. I don't think I have that in mine. I had it even simpler. Yeah, Q equals dictionary, OQ dictionary, IE, and I probably could have got rid of some of this, but it runs that. And then I thought, hey, you know what? I probably, if I've done all that, I probably want to put the word into my clipboard so I can then paste it and use it in a sentence somewhere and write it. So it was a simple script that I went through and was like, hey, you know, this way I can, I had it behind a hotkey in my main script, and I would just run it and take a look at what the random word was. And it was an easy way to come up with some ideas of new words. Now, this, of course, these words could have been anything, right? Anything I wanted to learn. And of course, I didn't have to drive it to the website looking for the dictionary, right? I could have had it do a lot of, you know, Google search for it or whatever. But did anybody have any questions on that? I seem to have lost my chat, so I'm trying to find where my chat disappeared to. There we go. But did that make sense to everybody as far as what programmatically wise, what it does? And then also let me go into the script. There's a little bit more to this one, but let me run it. And then you'll see it just opens my browser. So it's a Freudian slip. Yeah. Unintentional error regarding and revealing subconscious feelings. Yes. I have some very inappropriate jokes I could tell about that one. But you just get the gist of how it works, right? It went and read that file, randomly picked a row, then stuffed Freudian slip into my query, and where I can just glance at the answer. And now if I paste wherever I am, actually that's a bad one because it's already that. So if I have cite and I paste, it was on my clipboard. Now let's take a quick look here. This was my original script, and what I did with the original one was I was reading a different file that I didn't know how many rows it had. And so it was actually a fun experiment where Maestrieth and he was looking at this, he's like, oh, you could make that, you could optimize that. And I said, well, let's, what do you mean optimize it? How would you do that? And we tried several ways to optimize it by looking at the file, the file object, trying to randomly select the row and this and that. And then we started testing everything speed-wise on how long it took to do all the different stuff. And surprisingly, this was actually a very optimized way to do it. What I did was I took that file path and I stored it in a variable. And then I said, loop read this and just create a variable called AA and increment it. And that way, as it's looping over them, right, the very last one is going to be, this number is going to end up with how many rows there are. And that allowed me to then take my AA and then reuse that, which I don't have. Let's see, it's oh, I guess I got rid of. Oh no, this was it right here. So then I said, use the AA as the random number from 1 to whatever it is, right? And that still works with this, with the 100 rows. It's just, I thought to keep it really simple, let's look at this one, right, is I don't have that, the loop doing the other reading for this example to keep it even more concise and shorter. But it was a fun, I did this in about 5 minutes, I'd say. It was super easy because I already had something that already reads another file and had the random. I'm like, yo, this is simple, right? It's really quick and easy to do. But it's just a great way to show like how when you have a goal and you have AutoHotkey, you can write something very quickly to solve your problem of what you're trying to do. But if did anybody bring anything? Because I don't know if you saw my email saying, do you have something you're working on, either that you want to share that's really cool or something that you're working on that you want to troubleshoot?
Yeah, hi, this is Sabina. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Sabina.
Oh, okay, perfect. All right, so I just started using AutoHotkey, a company I used to work for. We used it for a special project where we needed to fill out web forms to retrieve information. Mm-hmm. But I work in accounting and finance, so I just automated one of our queries that we use all the time to retrieve data from our ERP system. So most of our accountants have to run these queries throughout the close. When you fill out the form, you have to retype the same information over and over again. So it's kind of annoying. Yeah. So with AutoHotkey, it really helped me automate that and shave off time, which is kind of critical during the financial close. Oh, but sure. Now we have, so that worked really well. So I'm hoping everybody's going to adopt that and start using it. But cool. We have another kind of problem where a lot of people send us emails. One team gets like 500 during a 5-day time period. Mm-hmm. That includes attachments. Mm-hmm. That the individual then has to open the attachment, upload it to the ERP system, mm-hmm. Attach support, and then move on to the next one. Mm-hmm. So I kind of think I know what I need to do. but I'm still pretty new to AutoHotkey. So how do you figure out what the best solution is? Even with the query that I automated, I found that the third or fourth time I looked at it, I'm like, oh, okay. So there's actually a better way of doing it. I had at that point watched more videos. I'd seen your class. I'm like, okay, I can do some things that work better. So how do you typically go about that, figuring out what the best approach is?
Yeah, that's honestly, it's a great question. Most of the time, it has to do with the programs you're trying to connect to, right? Is the first thing I look at and go, hey, are you guys using Outlook?
Yeah.
Okay, so Outlook has a COM interface. By the way, do you have any background in programming? Do you have some?
Yeah, I do. I use R regularly, SQL, Tableau, things like that. But so I like how AutoHotkey works. But I'm fairly new to AutoHotkey.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah. At least now I have an idea that you're somewhat familiar with object-oriented coding, and some concepts and stuff, right? It's a very different animal. See, a lot of people when they first start using AutoHotkey, and there's nothing wrong with this, but they start off sending keystrokes and mouse clicks, and often it works, but there are, depending on the program you're connecting to, there are more reliable, faster ways to do stuff, right? So,
and I found that as well. I have to say, I started off, the first script I did were more mouse clicks.
Yeah, oh, me too.
And then
we all do. Absolutely.
And now the query itself has no mouse clicks. It's a lot faster. Yeah. I found that I didn't really need to click through the screens. I did what you did for the script that you just showed. I just looked at the actual address and figured out how I could go from point A to D without really having to click through it.
Yeah,
so it worked out a lot better. Yeah, I agree. And
so,
I've done a couple shortcuts in, using COM for all the things like starting an email when you're not in Outlook,
right?
Setting up a meeting, things like that. So I've used a little bit of that.
Okay, yeah, and that's the whole thing is, boy, the second I hear that it's a Microsoft program, especially one that I know has COM built into, which almost all of them do, but then I go, COM is your answer, right? COM is your best friend. It might take a little longer to set it up, but boy, it's so reliable. And I'll forward you this, or I'll put it in the chat or something. We actually did a webinar on using Outlook with AutoHotkey, and in it, I tied in some Excel stuff. But in this example here, I have looping over certain file. This one is looping over selected files, which I don't think you'd want. But you can loop over files in a given folder and then save the attachments to a particular directory, right? Which sounds kind of close to part of what you'd want to do.
Yeah, I think originally when I looked at it, I was like, well, I know there is like an email macro that downloads all of the attachments and just puts them in a folder. Mm-hmm. And I was going to use R to just combine them all. That seemed like the easiest way to do it. But the person actually wants each email to be opened, each attachment to be uploaded. So there should be, like 400 to 500 uploads to the system, not one file.
Gotcha.
So my original way of thinking that it could solve it wasn't a good one. So this, I think, would probably work.
Well, this might even work better, because the one thing I was going to say, which I had never finished, although you could do it, is you could take the timestamp of when you last run it, because you don't want to keep re-uploading the same ones over and over, right?
Right.
And if you just point to a given folder, you'd run into that problem. With this one, what's really kind of cool is you could, let me look at my email first and make sure there's nothing crazy in there that, is sharing other people's email addresses. Yeah, here, this is nothing major right now. So what you could do is come in here and highlight a bunch of them, and then hit your hotkey or something to launch it, and it would run just on those selected. Like right now, this one is selected. But this would be an easy way. I think you could still do it programmatically, because you could look at the last date, look at the timestamp of when it was received, and then keep track of that and say, keep watching this folder, and when a new file comes in, then go do this process. But if you're really doing, one at a time, what you could do is come in and highlight a bunch of them, Yeah, I think that's okay. And then you could hit it, and it would iterate over each of these separately, right? And then each one of them, you upload them one at a time, just as you described, right? And you figure that out with depending on where you're uploading them to. Is it to a web form? I think you said.
Yeah, it's an ERP system for finance that keeps all of our transactions. And I was actually thinking if I had all of the emails in one folder, and as part of my loop, I actually would file each message that I handled away into another folder, kind of like this is incoming, this is done. Then it would always have only those that are in that folder that need to be worked on.
Yeah, and you could do that all within Outlook as well. You don't have to export them and then do that.
Okay.
I have an example somewhere else where this is where, like in Outlook, I've done a lot of different things, and let's see, I think it was here. Well, yeah, so moving emails, right? So here I have examples of moving emails to, from a given folder into a certain folder based on some criteria, right?
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Is this available online as well?
I don't know, but I'll be sure to send it to you or make it available. Let me go through and make sure there's nothing sensitive in it.
Okay, perfect.
But I'm always happy to share, anything with it. It's the trickiest thing for me with dealing with Outlook is as with anything, right? The objects that are available have different properties and different methods, but within Outlook, there are different ways of doing things. And sometimes you go one route and it's much harder. And then there's another one. And like you said, this is one that's just from experience, right? You realize, wow, like this one, I'm just looping over items, and it was so much easier than doing it from a different approach. The other thing is if you have more than one account, like I have I think 8 different email addresses in my Outlook. And so it will default to one, but I can give you an example of if you have more than one, you can basically put in the name of your account in here, and that will help it go to the right inbox or the right folder that you're looking for. That was a little tricky for me. Figuring that out. But yeah, it can all be done with Calm on an active looking Outlook, and it's awesome. I'm stoked to hear that you were thinking of it programmatically wise, and yeah, it can easily do everything you described. I had some of that from a friend at TI where I used to work. He would get all these attachments and have to do, like you said, save them all off, and it's painful. So why not?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've done a lot with emails before just because a lot of the financial reporting is typically via email. So that's why I had originally looked if I could find a macro that would allow me to systematically download all of the attachments into bulk and then combine them. But it's a different problem.
Right. Yeah. Especially if they want it individually done.
Right.
Yeah, which I can understand. At least some of the reasons that might be behind that. Right, is tracking wise, it's so much easier to know one separately.
Yeah, everybody that submits it has a certain number on it.
Oh.
And they want to be able to trace it back in the actual accounting system to that number.
Cool.
So it has to be done one by one.
Yeah.
But I think it's a huge opportunity for us to, in accounting and finance, because a lot of these things that we do are not super complex. They're just kind of tedious.
Yeah.
So being able to figure out how to automate, and there's so many vendors that offer RPA, but it's so expensive.
I know. I looked into it, and it's crazy the prices they're paying.
Right.
Yeah. I'm curious if you've given thought. The only thing that popped in my head with what you just described was do the same. You mentioned there's a unique identifier for each, I forget, you said contributor or someone is assigned to, right?
It's like a journal entry ID number. So it's a journal ID number that is unique to every email.
Oh, okay. All right, I misunderstood it. I was thinking it was a unique identifier for a given person that was going to work on it. But
No.
okay, I was going to say group them together by that, but now I get it.
Yeah.
It's per email, so yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Thanks for your help. Appreciate
You know,
it.
oh, absolutely. The thing that I would consider while you're doing all this, because it sounds like you got a great grasp of it, and just reach out. I hope you have my email somewhere. Reach out to me also, and I can help talk through stuff as well. But the other thing I'd consider doing in this process is while you're already uploading the form, you're getting all the right pieces. Why not build a log file of everything that transpired into like a tab delimited data file that's so easy that you have a record of everything, that's super easy to burn through, right? It's so much easier.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I know exactly what that entails, but I'll definitely read up on it.
Well, all you do is you could have like the timestamp the email came in, right? That unique identifier that you mentioned, and maybe something, if there's anything else that's relevant, right? You'd write those three things to a text file, that gets appended to, and then you just have a nice file, a local file that's easy to search across everything, that has a record of the time, maybe even the timestamp it came in, the timestamp it got uploaded, depending on how far apart those two times are, right? It's so it would literally take you like 10 minutes to incorporate that into your script, right? At the most. And then you have this nice file where you can look at it and go, hey, what's really interesting is this thing ran for hours and hours and hours and then stopped, and it just stopped updating anything. Or people are saying it's saying it got uploaded in my script here. I have it, marked off as it did, but I don't see it there, right? And at least this way it got processed.
Okay. Very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely working on it, so it'll be exciting.
Cool. Yeah, there's a couple. Let me go. I'll put one in the chat here. So, yeah, this one is from Mickers. Here's a good thread if you haven't found it already, and let me put it in the chat on using Outlook. It's on the AutoHotkey forum, and he has links to a lot of objects and methods that's available. And to me, Outlook, it was really confusing. It compared to Excel and Word, it was much more complex. But yeah, Outlook has a lot of stuff that you can do with it.
Perfect.
Thanks for typing in. You bet.
Yep.
Anybody else have anything they're either working on or want to talk through what they're trying to do?
Hey, this is Ahmed. I was just going to share I was just working on a script that is really simple and really handy.
Let's hear it.
I was working on it while we were talking. Let me just share my screen.
There's nothing in here that's proprietary, is there?
Oh, no.
Okay, good.
Just give me 1 second. I'll bring up this. Yeah, so I didn't know that you could use your Windows process ID to switch like windows around. So everyone has their like main browser window that they have all their stuff in. Like you see how many tabs I have here.
Yeah.
So I've always because the tabs, they cause the window title to change. So
yeah.
So I was wondering, how do you get it so that you can switch to this window with the hotkey? Because if I'm on this tab, then the title will change. So I couldn't figure that out.
Yeah, generally speaking, the easy way is to use one of the two things. See in the active window info, the AU Spy or whatever it's called. See below the window title. Yeah, go down. See where it says AHK class and HK_EXE. Right. So those are two additional ways that you can easily keep track of a given GUI or a program. Right. What gets complicated is, let's say you had two instances of Chrome running and you wanted a specific one, right? Then you wouldn't be able to use that alone, because it is tied to Chrome, or in this case, you had it on site when you were clicking earlier.
Yeah, that's the problem I ran into. So instead of using the HCA class, EXE, there's another thing called the process ID
Sure.
that you can use, and that's what I did here. I'll just demonstrate it. Basically,
Cool.
I press the hotkey, and then if it doesn't have a value in that variable that I have where I store the process ID, then it'll say this to get the process ID. And then
okay. All right. You're basically setting your index or what to look for, right? Your needle.
Exactly, yeah. So I'm using the mouse get pause, which you can get the process ID, which doesn't change. So if I close this browser window, which I can do, then this process ID would reset. But so yeah, that's what allows me to just.
But on that, see, now this I haven't done. Inside Chrome, that'll still connect to. That's not unique to that tab in Chrome, is it?
It's unique to this whatever window.
Yeah, but not the like if you change the tabs. So it okay.
Yeah, exactly. So I can change the tabs, and I can just use the button.
Yeah, but you could see in this case you could still use the class, and it would. Granted, you're right. I mean, if you had more than one window of Chrome, then you'd have a problem. But
yeah, I have a lot of windows of Chrome.
Okay. All right.
It's helpful to like get to that main window.
Yeah.
Just wanted to show that.
Yeah, no, it's a great point of like in the intro to AutoHotkey course I just made, I did stuff with using the class and EXE, but I didn't get into that PID just because I thought that was it's a little deeper and not that many people run into it, but that's great.
Yeah, there's help on it here on the mouse cat pause.
Mm-hmm. Did everyone understand what we're talking about and what he did there? It's not overly complex, but it's pretty cool that there's a unique ID for every, and it's not just any GUI, right? It's any program running. Maybe John knows better than me on this one, but everything when it's first launched has a unique ID that you can then reference. As long as that script is open, it doesn't change, right? And so you can easily connect to that given program and do what you want with it.
It's really handy for like pinned windows that you're always referring to, so you don't have to move your mouse and click it or anything.
See, I almost never have more than one of the same kind of window open for a given program. So I even though I know everything you're saying, I don't use it and it's just because I haven't had the need, right? But I can see how if you're having multiple versions of a thing, it's very helpful, because otherwise you can't do what you want to do unless you can tie it to the title and then switch back to the title. But that's just there's already something that's unique, so it's great.
Yeah, a lot of times you can do that, the title. But in this case, since the window title changes, I have to find something.
No, it's a great point. You're right. Yeah, thanks for sharing.
Would you also use that to push certain things to the background, or like for instance, if you ran a script and you don't really want it to show up and kind of clog up your screen, could you use that to push it to the back?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Or let's say you could disable it. You could what was the ones in the video I was doing? Because I was playing with them, but there's enable, disable. You could hide it. Yeah, like you said, activate it, close it, kill it. There's a lot of stuff you can do with it.
Thanks.
But anyone else? John, did you have anything you were up for sharing that you've been working on? And I don't know if everyone mentioned, is everyone familiar with quick access pop-up?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with it.
Okay. Well, let me first see if John, do you have anything that you wanted to like give a little tutorial on, or?
No, I was fighting using Gmail just to use the clipboard and copy from Gmail, and I just tried again before asking you for your help, and then it worked. So just you being there made things work. So,
there we go. That's it.
Yeah.
I just send me a check when you're ready. That was that's some work I did for a while. So let me share my screen because I don't want to be an idiot and keep talking the stuff that no one can see. So years, I don't know, Jean, what do you think? Like a year and a half ago is when you introduced me to QAP. Maybe it's been 2 years, somewhere in there.
It started first with the software was called Folders Pop-Up, and it was in 2014.
Yeah.
And I improved it, and I renamed it Quick Access Pop-Up because at some point it was not only for folders, but also to launch any type of application or website. And then I added much more features, so Quick Access Pop-Up became the new name of the app.
Yeah, no, I was meaning when you introduced me to it.
Oh yeah, it was a Quick Access Pop-Up maybe 2 years ago.
I'd say about 2 years ago. So it's not important about the timing, but what was important was before Jean happened, and it was so funny because I was asking him about something entirely different, and he was helping me, and he's like, "Hey, to use this tool, QAP," I'm like, "I have no idea what you're talking about." So before that, I'm going to show you here. Here's one of my menus, and I can. This is all a GUI I built with AutoHotkey with icons and menus, and it took me a lot of time to create all this stuff, right? And then when you go to run it, it will this would dump in. Actually, it didn't even work, but it'll launch scripts for me. Like this would launch my script to compare sets of things and whatnot, right? And then when Jean demonstrated his tool to me, it changed my life in the sense of it. So let me demonstrate now his tool. It's going to look almost the same, right? This is QAP in the actual running instance of it, but I'll show you how to configure it. But I have configured. Let's say I'm doing some AutoHotkey coding, and I want to read the file read with UTF encoding in it, and I can never remember this. So I built myself a little snippet. What's that?
Sorry about that. I just had to move on.
Okay. But you can use it for snippets. But as John was saying, there's 80 things, or so many different things it does. I use it predominantly for snippets of code because I hate having to write stuff and I can't remember all my hot strings because I have so many. But you can have shortcuts to. Actually, I do have some in here. So let me bring it back up so I can. Here are my folders where I can go and this would. It's a little complicated. So if I have an open here, what are these called? What kind of windows is called? I can't remember.
Dialog box.
Dialog box. Yes, thank you. Yeah. So if it detects if this is open and I'm like, hey, I wanted to jump to my AHK work folder, it will detect that window is open and then navigate to it for me. So notice it got me to my work folder. And I can go ahead and pick from there. Or if I was trying to save something, so if I'm here in my save window, and I preset all these folders I use a lot. Let's say I want to go to my icons folder. It'll detect that I'm in there and then navigate to it for me. So if you use a lot of network folders that are really a pain in the butt to navigate to, super, super easy way to have very quick access to them. If you don't have a dialog box open, and I do the same thing, it will open an Explorer window, or correct me if I'm wrong, Jean, it'll open your default File Explorer tool. Is that right?
Yes, it's a Windows Explorer, or it can support Total Commander or Directory Opus, which are the two most popular file managers.
Yeah. The other big common thing people use it for is for jumping to sites. And so like here I have web pages where if I wanted to navigate to them and open the other page, but it'll automatically go to bookmarked. Think of them as just like website bookmarks, right? So it's and now the cool part. Let me show you the really cool part. Before I would painstakingly make these GUIs, and now I can come in here and use this really pretty GUI interface. And let's say under syntax assist, that I wanted to add something under AutoHotkey. So I'm going to say add. What am I going to add? This is how I'm saying there's so many things you can do, right? But I'm going to add a snippet because I love little snippets. it's not a hot string, but that'll work. So I'm going to add it. And I could actually create a hot string or a hotkey to launch this, right? But I'm going to save and reload it. And now when let's get back to here. Now when I come in here and go under syntax assist, AutoHotkey, oh, here's my just a test. And then it throws in that little snippet that I just did, right? I could have pointed it to a folder and said, go open that folder or a URL or whatever. But at a high level, Jean, is there anything else you want to mention at the highest level of the capabilities? Those to me are the core.
In fact, you can launch, there's many type of favorites. If you want to open the add favorite dialog box, we'll see the different type of favorites. So you have folders, which is the most used, I think, type of favorite. Then special folders is Windows special folders like desktop, the trash, what is the name?
Recycle bin. Yeah.
Recycle bin, yeah. And so documents, applications, Windows application, links to websites, FTP sites where you can set the password, the username and password if you want to have an automatic logon to FTP site, snippets that you showed, QAP feature, that is a lot of special dynamic menus that are built automatically based on your current system. And then you can group your favorite by submenus with any level of submenus. You showed that in your menu.
Right.
And you can have shared menus. So if you work with someone on the same network or using a Dropbox folder, you can share a submenu. So in each of the users will have their own quick access pop-up menu, but in this menu, there can be a shared menu that will be automatically updated for every users when there are changes done to these shared folders. And finally, there's the last item was group. So you can launch different favorites at the same time. For example, if you need to open a Word document and a website at a given site and then an application or anything, you can have only in one click to launch these various items.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of items you can have. Then you can launch them from the menu. So that's the basic way that you showed. You can also launch them using a shortcut. So as you would do with the hotkey command in AutoHotkey or using the various ways of creating shortcuts in AutoHotkey. So you can, here you can select the modifier. You can select if you want to use a keyboard shortcut or a mouse button. So you could do, for example, shift left click or something like that. Shift left click is not a good idea because you use it for a lot of other things that you want to keep free for the other apps. But you could do the default button is the middle mouse button. So that's the way to show the menu. If you don't need this button in other application, and there's many people never using the middle mouse button, is the way to start it. And so that's the shortcuts. And the third way is to launch favorite is the hot string, as you showed. I would say that 95% of the time, hot strings are used to launch or to type snippets. But they could also use to launch an application. You would type something and an app would be launched for some special needs. And about snippets, for most people here like coding, so there are two types of snippet. One that is only text, like snippets of codes that you want to reuse in various programs, your email address, your credit card number, things like that. And it can also be, could you click the advanced setting tab at the top, advanced setting? So it can also be of a macro mode. So in macro mode, the macro can include some coding things, not as flexible as you would do using AutoHotkey itself, but you can insert placeholders, you can insert, you can send keys to the application. Instead of sending the text, you could send Alt F4 if you want to close, for example. So that's another type of usage that is a little more advanced. So there's a lot. I added features in the last 4 years, 4 or 5 years, with good help of users. One of these being with us, Dale is a very good user. He's part of the beta testers of the application, helping to debug it before I launch it for everybody. And yeah, and now I'm working for many months without releasing any new feature, because I'm rewriting the whole application using a different technique to manage the data. Do you want me to go a little deeper in that?
Well, let's hold on for a second.
Yeah.
But thank you. Because the other thing I want to say was, especially because Sabina at least said she works. You know, she works. There's other people there. The one of the really cool features I liked about it was that you can set up a designated where you can configure either I set it up and you can use it, but you can't change it, or you can set it up where people can, add to it and delete it as well, right? And I think it's a great feature to be able to say,
we're talking about shared menus. In fact, there are 3 types of usage. The first one is for your own use, but on different computers. So maybe you have a computer at home and one at the office. And there are some favorites that will work regardless of the system they are running on. So, for example, websites and snippets. So you can put them in a shared menu, a personal share menu, and you will have your websites and your snippets available on the 2 computers, and you can edit them on any of the 2, and they will be shared. If you have a Dropbox, of course, to store the file that will hold this information. So that's the first usage. The second one is, I call it team. I'm not sure the word. So if you go in, if you add a snippet, or just edit this one in advanced options. No, a shared menu, not a snippet, a shared menu. Add the shared menu. Okay, in the last tab, you have the 3 types. First one is personal. The second is collaborative. That's the word I was looking for. So it's for a team working together. So anybody can edit the menu, and everybody will see the changes done by others. There's conflict checking, which is very complex, but I would not guarantee 100%, but 99% that changes done by 2% at the same time, there will be flagging of this menu is being modified by someone else, so you cannot change it, things like that. And the last type is centralized. Yes. So it's, for example, you have in a company, you have in the HR department, someone wanting to have a set of favorites, a set of links to the HR stuff, for example, on the intranet, being available to every quick access pop-up users. They can manage this menu centrally. Everybody will be able to use it, but only one person or some person will be able to edit the menu. So that's the third approach.
Yeah, but if you've ever, now again, this one is mine, right? If you've ever tried to create these menus, like, oh my word, it is painful. It's a lot of work, and QAP makes it so easy. So he also has a lot of great tutorials. We actually, I think, did a deep dive that was, I forget how long it was, on it. So there's plenty of videos out. Okay, yeah.
It was with you, so it was a deep demo. Yeah.
Yeah.
Excuse my English, and especially today.
Which actually, Jean, that's one we didn't mention. It's available in how many languages? 5?
7, 8, 9.
9. That's what. Yeah. Sorry.
A few are less updated than the others. I had 2 versions of Chinese languages. One of these being abandoned and the other one not being well maintained. So I was expecting many users from China, but no, there's not that many users, and the translator at some point was not available to continue the translation. But so of course it's in English. You could go in options and show the option button at the top right.
Just a second.
Yeah.
I was just getting rid of that before I forgot.
And you have the language drop down. So it's in German, Dutch, Italian, French, Spanish, Korean, Portuguese. And yeah, that's both being used.
Yeah, so it's a pretty amazing program that I use daily. I'm just lazy, so I haven't converted my old ones over because they're so intricate. It just then they usually work, so I haven't converted them over. But yeah, it's a great tool, and it's shareware, so you can use it, and then if you feel like donating, which I recommend, you can.
It's my main hobby. So when I have free time, that's what I'm doing.
Yeah,
not all my free time, but that's. I like coding. So I work in IT, but never as an official programmer in my various jobs. But coding was kind of my fun task, my fun hobby.
Yeah. Because I'm going to ask Jean here in a second to expand on, I guess, some of the changes he's been working on. Unless someone else either has something they want to share or a question specific about what they're trying to work on. Is there anyone have anything they want to bring up? So we're just not monopolizing the entire thing. I'm going to guess no. Someone would have said something by now. So Jean, did you want to talk a bit about the changes you're trying to implement?
Yeah.
Or not trying to, but are.
I would just maybe tell the story of how the data is managed in this application. So when you do a quick script, you don't need to store information a lot, so you can use variables, and when the script is finished, variables disappear. But if you want to keep the information from one session to the other, one usage of the application to the other, you have to store it. So you can use text file, you can use any file, you can use a database. So it's one of the changes I've done is to move some of the information to a SQLite database. The other thing inside the application, I was to store and in fact, to store the data entered by the user. So if you go to the settings window, you will see that there's a list view with every favorite, each line being a favorite. Could you share? Oh, I could share my screen, maybe.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Where is it? Okay, I opened it here. Yeah. Okay, and I'll minimize a few things that I don't know. Windows being opened at the same time. Okay, so it's a French window, so you may see French words here and there. So when you install Quick Access Pop-Up, you can use a setup installer, so a very easy installer, or you can use it in the portable mode, so you have a zip file that you unzip and everything is there for it to be used. So it's here a portable version with the basic stuff that is created when you install the application, when you first run the application, so I won't. And this is the new version I'm working on. So you will see, Joe, that the interface is a little bit different than the one you showed before. I cleaned up some of the stuff that was in various buttons at the bottom and at the top, and moved it to a menu. So there's a menu bar now that will give access to many features without having the main window being cluttered with a lot of buttons. So what I was talking about is this thing here is the list view. So a list view that holds the information in various columns, being the name. So if I show the menu here, you see the first is in the works, it's a submenu. You have the C drive, you have the Windows folder. So these favorite, you have the name here, you have the type of favorite, You have the hotkey if one has been assigned, or a not string if it's been assigned, and then the location. In the first version that I did, and it was based on a work of user Brian something on the AutoHotkey forum, a guy that never replied to my email because I think he was not using the forum anymore. Maybe he's gone with another type of application. But I started from a very little script that was demoing how you can do a menu using objects in this case and functions. So, and I liked it, so I wanted it to be more versatile and more features to it. So I started adding the features to it. But at first, if the user was entering a new favorite, it was stored in this list view. And to build the menu, so to convert this list here into this menu, the data was read from the list view. So you have command in AutoHotkey that are LV for list view add, to add a row, LV get, I think, I'm not sure. So to retrieve the information. So to build a menu, the application was going into every line of the list view, getting the information and creating the menu from that. But at some point it was quite limited and did not allow to create any dynamic menu, because dynamic menu are not built from what you see in this list view. It's built from something that is collected from your Windows environment. And by dynamic menu, I will give as an example, the in the works menu here includes your frequent folders, so those that you use most frequently, frequent files, then recent folders, so folders that you just opened recently, and recent files. So these had to be stored somewhere. So that's where I started using objects to store the information. So not only variable, but variable that can be defined with various. There are two main type of objects that can hold various properties. So you have favorite.name, I'm simplifying, but favorite.name, favorite.location, favorite.shortcut. So it's one object which is favorite, where you can have various properties. And the other type of objects is a list of items. So the objects is holds various item of the same thing. So that's using with these two types of object. I rewrote the application using this approach, and now I'm doing another rewrite. And this one is many months of work, is to convert it to the object model, because with quick access with AutoHotkey you can create classes. So I now have a class that is called favorite, and a class that is called container. So a container will contain favorites. A container can be of type regular menu or shared menu or group, which are the three types of the same thing, containing folders but having various different behaviors. So and I did it just because I wanted to become more familiar using the object model, which is very powerful. But I learned how to do object programming, object model programming, while converting the application. So it was not. I didn't start with a small. Yes, I did some tries with small things, but then I say go, and so it's many months of work. I don't remember when I started that, but maybe it was something in November last year. So just doing that. So that's why the current public release does not evolve a lot, because normally I add features every month. But for now, it's more quiet on that side, and I work it with myself only, doing debugging and all that. And now I'm at the stage where I'm asking beta testers to use it and find new bugs with new fun to debug these. So, and as I said, one of these user helping me is on this chat now. And so that's good to have other people using your app, because you cannot test every scenario by yourself. You need someone that will prefer to use keyboard shortcuts one that will use to enable the numeric shortcuts. For example, in the menu here, you could, in the options, enable numeric shortcuts. So when you reopen the menu, you have numbers here that you can use. So I could open the menu with the hotkey, which is by default Windows W, and then press 4, and it will change this Explorer window to the folder that I choose. So, for example, now if I want to open Notepad, I press 6 and it opens Notepad. So if I don't use it personally, so there are bugs that were specific to this type of usage, and there's many combination of features that can interact correctly or not.
Well, if you remember, Jean, one of those things, it was so funny too, because apparently I was like one of the first people to use QAP for writing AutoHotkey syntax, right? And we found a little bug of like it was doing some funny stuff. But I find it so ironic, right, that like people, but again, your target audience for QAP isn't AutoHotkey users. So even though they're more, they will
you don't need to know how to code to use this. That's the good thing. It helps any type of user. And there's a setup program that you just have to click next, and the app becomes available. And then what you have to get familiar to is how to go into the settings here and click the buttons to add, edit, remove. You have these arrows here to move an item in your menu. You could add line separators. You can add columns if you want the menu to be, the menu to be split in various columns like you see now.
Yeah.
So you have to explore, but you don't need to code to do that. Contrary to what you showed your own, AutoHotkey made menu, was a lot of lines.
Oh man! Yeah.
And to change it, you needed to go into your script and find the good lines to edit. And
it was a beating. Yeah, it really was. I know you said earlier, you mentioned, and I know from talking to you too, you did a lot of this because you wanted to just learn more about using classes and objects, right? But what I would love is after you're done completely, transitioning over, is to have a debrief, whether we do it in a webinar or just a one-on-one, I like to record it, of talking through the lessons you learned, and especially about the things that that you noticed. Like, I gotta think, hopefully you're gonna see your code maintenance is gonna be much easier in the long run, right after you make your conversions. The speed of things that are running, right? I'd love to talk through of like
that's the main goal, to make it easier to maintain.
Yeah.
The speed, I don't think it will make it much more performant, because just to create object in the object model approach, there's a lot of lines that you have to add just for the object to be maintainable, to be changeable, to be able to you create methods, maybe for those familiar with that. So you create methods to have the object do something. Or if you want to change a property of the object, you have to create a method to do that. And if you don't use it, you can have more direct access to your data and in lesser number of lines, lines of codes. So maybe in the end, it's a little slower. I don't know, but it's not noticeable. It's fractions of seconds.
Yeah. And then just because I know, correct me if I'm wrong, but when you first started, you were using any files for storing a lot of your stuff, and now you're using the SQL database, right? That's already in your current version.
Yeah. But I'm still using the ini file for. I can show it to you here.
Yeah, the main settings.
Edit file. So there's a lot of configuration that are in the global section, and then you have. I'll show you here. A section called favorite, where every favorite has all its data here, and lots of data being empty because there's no data for every type of every property, if you wish, of the different favorites. But when I started to do something like the in the works and to build the frequent folders, so I need to remember what you are using.
Yeah. And
there's a background process running every minute that will check your recent items in Windows, and see everything that is new in your recent items and increment every item that you already used before, or if not, create a new one, and then allowing to show what were the one you use most frequently. I'll just to show it again, I'll just add something here that is show frequency index in the menu. So now in the works recon folder, oh, it didn't work. It didn't work. It's a beta version here, so I'll just restart it.
Sure. So when you gave a walkthrough for Maestricht and I of using the database stuff, and Maestricht has his XML class that he's used for storing all the stuff, and now he has gotten so into using the SQL, and it's so much faster, especially with bigger data sets, right, and certain things. Yeah. Anyway, that was why I brought that up.
Yeah, and I'll go into the SQLite thing. So just to show you, for frequent folders here, you have a number which is 2 because it's a new installation that I've just done. But for my real work, it can be 79 times that I use something. So the most frequently used items are here, and it is read now from a database, and I lost the window where it was. It's here, recently modified. So here, qap-frequent.db, it's a SQLite file. So there's an application, a client that allowed to open this database. So regular users will not need to open it, but here you see the data that has been collected by quick access pop-up. And for example, if I'm not grouping, but just sorting, you see that settings has been used twice. Settings is access to the setting dialog box. You will see that, let's find another example. I think I have, no, I deleted it. I had a view that was showing in this, but you see that's a very powerful tool. SQLite, I liked it. It's very easy. It's very easy to use it from AutoHotkey. There's a very good class done by Maestricht that helps using it. So you can easily add columns, add lines, create predefined queries. So that's how I can now collect the information I collect to build some of the dynamics menus.
Cool. Did anybody else have any other questions? Anything? Anything they're working on? They want to troubleshoot or? And I don't know if anyone wants to just bring up some ideas of my next course for Udemy for the intermediate level of what I'm going to cover with AutoHotkey. I was thinking it would be definitely go into loops, or that might be its whole thing, because there's so many different ways to do loops. It's almost too many, really, right? There's so many different loops in AutoHotkey. That could be a course in itself of just all the different ways you can loop, including a for loop over an object, which is one of my favorite ways to do stuff. The any files, that was a tough one that I didn't include because it's built into AutoHotkey. It's so easy to store stuff and get it, but I thought that was just a little more advanced than the intro course, so I didn't cover it. So that'll be in there. And if you haven't seen the any read or any write, go check them out. They're simple to use, and they're super helpful for storing. That's what Jean was demonstrating, showed his file at least of showing where the file settings are, that he then goes and reads, and then we'll go update them there if the changes are made. Cool. Well, like I said, this was supposed to be like a shorter webinar, just since it's the middle of summer and everyone's busy. So let's just call it a day. And thank you all for showing up. Thanks, Jean, for demonstrating, and Ahmed for chatting. I think we lost Sabina earlier. She had a meeting to go to. People working. Yeah, what's that like? I'm kidding. I don't miss the corporate world, though. I'll say that. But thank you all for being here. And next month, I'm not sure what the topic will be, but we'll figure it out and have something fun. Thanks, everyone. Bye.